Welcome back, my friends, to a special seasonal episode. Today, we are discussing the time when Christmas was banned. Amongst other things, because honestly, in order to understand why Christmas was banned, you have to understand the history of Christmas. Of course. Now, of course, all the Christians think they already know what the origin of Christmas is. It started when Jesus was born on December 25th. No. In fact, experts have since proven that Jesus was not born on that day. But I will tell you why people thought he was, and everything. But before we can do that, we must begin at the beginning of the celebration. Where did the celebration of Christmas really come from? Where did all the traditions and all the ideas and everything come from? Well, to be completely honest with you, we do not have a specific one point in time in history where the celebration of winter came about, because humans have been celebrating the winter time for thousands of years, ever since the days of ancient Egypt. The sun god Horus, it was part of his duty to help bring light to the world. Apollo, the sun god, he was born on December 25th. And this is why you research what people tell you, because I made a mistake. It was not Apollo that was born on December 25th. No one knows when he was born. It was actually the Roman deity Sol Invictus, which just actually goes to further accent how influential the Romans were on Saturnalia and the whole pagan festival before it even was a thought to be turned into Christmas. Also, some experts do claim that Jesus was born in September, but no one claims that he was born in December. Okay, back to the video. Oh yes, and so was Horus. Oh yes, and so was another character that we will be talking about. Not Jesus. Someone very close to the proximity of Jesus, though. And we will get into him a little bit later, because he didn't come along until a little bit later. So, everyone's heard of Rome, right? The Roman Empire. Great subject for a lot of movies and all that. In fact, drop one of your favorite movies down below. One of my favorites is the original Gladiator movie. Original. Not the current one. I haven't seen the current one, but the first one, hell yeah. Not exactly historically accurate, but hey, that's Hollywood for you. And that's why we're here, to clear up what everyone else tends to contrive or askew. As you may know, or may not, it was a very typical thing of Rome. As they were growing their empire, they would absorb the new country or the new group of people that they had conquered. And, of course, they would want the conquered would want to hold on to their personal religions because they were different from the Romans. But, you see, that would create a problem, because then those people would rebel because they're believing in their own gods. They're not getting along with the Romans. They're not worshiping at the same temples and everything. So the Romans realized, but what if they were worshiping at our own temples? What if they thought that their gods were the same ones as ours? And so that is what they did. They started to twist and manipulate the religions of the people that they conquered in other nations, so that they would be able to convince the conquered people, say, hey, we all have the same gods. There's no need to fight. Yeah, we kicked your ass in the war, but that's because that was the God's will, the gods that both you and we serve. And that's how they managed to maintain their empire for such a long time and to be able to keep on growing it. And eventually, it came down to one of the last emperors. He may have been the last one, but don't quote me on that. Because honestly, I am leaving out some details here and there because I want you to Google these things, to research these things. You can't trust Google for everything, obviously, but we can actually trust them for a few things here and there, especially when it comes to ancient history, on a lot of things. But you do have to increase your circle of research. You can't just keep it down to, just one source, because Google is just a search engine. There are many sources on these subjects. There are many historical artifacts that cover all these things, and you can discover them all for yourself. And I want you to, so that you can understand that the devil did not plant that evidence. But let's get back to the Roman Emperor Constantine, because when he came along, he was the one that decided to legalize his own version of Christianity. And why do I say that? Well, let me tell you a little story. You see, Constantine was having issues with Christians at the time. Christians were, the religion of Christianity was spreading, and it was very popular. They were being persecuted here and there, but there were some places that were very open and accepting of Christians. Also remember, Christians back then were super different from the ones we have today, okay? So there was probably a pretty good reason why they were so popular. Maybe some negative ones too. Maybe there were some bad apples in the mix that provided persecution. Maybe there was just straight up people that didn't like the positive influence of Christianity. That is always a thing. People are always afraid of what they don't understand or what's different. Christians are no different in being afraid of what they don't understand, especially when it comes to history. But Constantine, he wanted to resolve this issue with the Christians. But that was a little bit of a problem, because as he was wrapping up the conquest of Christianity, he was actually in a literal fight with them. He did have Christians on his side in his military, but one of the last battles that he fought, it was at a bridge. You can look it up, because this is the Catholics' Hail Mary for why they exist and why they are so convinced on so many things, because of this story right here. At the Battle of this bridge, it is in Roman records that there were more Christians on Constantine's side, and that the other side, the leader, look up his name, look up his reputation. According to the Romans, that guy, that general or that king, he was supposedly very terrible to Christians, and he persecuted them a lot. And Constantine was the hero. But other sources not only disagree with Constantine's retelling of the other character. By the way, it was also a very popular thing of Romans and just conquerors in general to talk crap about the people that they lost, to over-exaggerate, and in this case, even lie, because there have been documents uncovered that prove that the other leader of this battle on the opposing side was actually pro-Christian, that he actually had more Christians on his side because he was genuinely nicer to Christians than Constantine was. And by the way, I will provide a link to help with your research down in the description below, so do check that out. So, what did Constantine do to resolve this issue? Well, according to the story of Catholicism and those who believe it happened, it is reported. And it is supposedly canonical because it's written in the history books and everything, but there's more to it because of what was exposed later. According to Constantine, he had a dream where he saw, if I recall correctly, it was a banner of it was like a white flag with a cross on it. And it was like flying over the battlefield. And he woke up and was like, "Oh, this is a sign that I should convert to Jesus, and that I should win. I should fight in the name of Jesus. And if I do that, perhaps I will win. Jesus is clearly granting me victory if I pray to him and make him my savior." And so as the story goes, Constantine woke up the next morning and painted crosses on all his Roman soldiers' shields and on banners and everything, and he won the war in the name of Jesus, and yippee. Well, Romans have a tradition, specifically Roman emperors. They have a tradition of creating a monument. Sometimes it's just a statue, but sometimes it'll be a full-blown monument as well, to testify of their victories, to celebrate. And if the Emperor Constantine had truly been saved, converted, and all that, then there would obviously be crosses all over the monument, right? Well, there are not. Not a single cross is on that monument. Not only that, but the story of that dream did not come out until after the battle, years later. Not only did this story come out years after the battle had occurred, but it was not officially recorded until after Constantine's death in 337. You will also see evidence of Constantine persecuting Christians because they would not hand over their sacred texts to the Roman Catholic government, some of which were actually destroyed. And you will see that it was Constantine who brought the individuals together to create the Council of Nicaea, which created the Bible. And so in that year 336, Constantine declared Christianity and the winter solstice to be joined together. He declared in 336 AD that Jesus was born and should be celebrated on December 25th. And what were the things that Constantine mixed into Christianity when he legalized it? Not just the birth day specifically, but also all the pagan symbols of winter solstice, or as the Romans called it, Saturnalia. The tree, the wreath, gift-giving, feasting, and singing, none of which the Christians originally celebrated. And just like all religions that get involved with the government, and really anything that the government gets involved in that isn't about protecting the people, because that's the only job they should be doing, people were very quick to discover that this is not original Christianity. Catholicism, what Constantine had practically invented, according to these people, it wasn't Christianity. And so they started creating their own versions. They created Lutheranism, You already know who I'm referring to that. Martin Luther. Martin Luther, Lutheranism. John Calvin, Calvinism. And then there was Protestantism much later, and then eventually one of our favorite groups of Christianity, the party poopers, the top party poopers of the whole religion, the Puritans came along. And it was the Puritans who were the first to really say, Christmas is pagan and we should not celebrate it. Christians, real deal Christians, were saying that. Now, I don't know how much they actually knew. In fact, I'm guessing they didn't know everything. Otherwise, they would have been a lot more careful about the Bible and the Last Supper and everything, because, well, yeah, the Last Supper is, there's some interesting things about that too. But, in fact, let's get into that real quick, because you see, the very symbolism of the Last Supper could very easily be an addition to Christianity. Let me show you real quick what I'm talking about. As Emperor Constantine was legalizing Christianity, he was also a member of a cult known as the cult of Mithras. This was a cult specifically for Roman officers and royalty. And they had a lot of interesting similarities with Christianity. For example, well, let me just read from my notes here. The cult was just a little older than Christianity and features many unsettling similarities, including the protagonist, Mithra, being a mediator between God and humans, eating and drinking bread and wine in representation of death and rebirth. And that was specifically as part of a last sacrificial supper before Mithra was to ascend to heaven. Oh yes, and this character, Mithra, he was born on December 25th as well. And he is all about the sun and light representing truth, knowledge, and enlightenment. And the whole thing is honestly all about this light of knowledge conquering the darkness of ignorance and, well, stupidity, I guess. Ignorance, lack of knowledge, stubbornness, whatever you want to say, the darkness. Light equaling truth, darkness equaling lies. Now, where does this tie in? I mentioned the bread and the wine. In fact, that didn't even necessarily come from Mithra either. That did not come from that cult. That symbology also goes back all the way to ancient Egypt with Osiris. Look it up. Look up the sacraments for Osiris and his resurrection. There are a lot of comparisons between Osiris and Jesus and the Last Supper sacraments there as well. In fact, some people think that because Jesus supposedly went off to Egypt when he was younger and then returned because of Herod wanting to kill the king of the Jews and all that, being jealous of it for the title and all that, some people think that Jesus got the idea for the Last Supper directly from the Egyptians. I don't know. That's a possibility. But the point being, the Last Supper is not original in its sacraments, in its representation, or anything. There was a cult celebrating it right before Christianity was invented, as well as ancient Egypt and probably some other religions out there as well. But it's been happening since ancient Egypt days. Where does Christmas fit into all of this? Well, aside from December 25th being Mithras' birthday, there's actually something very curious that you wouldn't think connects them, but they kind of do. Actually, directly do. You remember the story of the three wise men? Well, there is an ancient depiction back in the Roman days, or perhaps a bit later. I'm not quite sure when it was commissioned, but it's a very, 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 very old and ancient portrait of the three wise men coming to Jesus. It's very famous. It's hung in Catholic church. It's hung in a church somewhere, but it's primarily Catholic or Orthodox, one of those up there. Ancient times. And you look at this painting, look at their heads, look at what they're wearing. Because you'd think, oh, these are magi, these are wise men, surely they've got some sort of special fancy hat. In all the other depictions out there, yes. But in this one, they are wearing a very special hat. All of them are wearing the exact same hat. In fact, I'll share the picture with you right here. In fact, let's just blow it up on the screen so you can see the whole thing. But look at these hats. They're all the same. Why would renowned, rich, wise men be wearing these three particular hats that are the exact same? Well, guess who also wears this hat? Mithra. These men are magi, studiers of the mythic arts. I'm not saying these three wise men were Mithric members, but they are depicted with the exact same hat as Mithra. And here's a picture of Mithra next to them. I know it's an interesting little hat, isn't it? Kind of shaped like a Smurf's hat. And I did some digging into this and discovered that these hats do not actually originate from the Mithric cult. They came from a place called Phrygia, which I believe was originally Turkey. It was Turkey or Iran. Iran might have been the origin of Mithra, or I'm not sure. Do your own damn research for once in your life, hey? But there was this hat was called the Phrygian cap, and it was originally used for foreigners and foreign slaves. But over time, this hat was used to identify a freed slave. They were given a very special hat. And then later on, this same hat was used to represent freedom in France, in America even. And Lady Liberty herself is featured wearing it. It's traditionally considered as a red hat. And so, yeah, and it is in the, from what I understand, in the Mithric context, it is to represent wisdom, enlightenment. You see the people that graduate from colleges, sometimes, although they'll wear them in high schools too, they wear that square-shaped hat, and they have the tassel hanging off the side. That goes all the way back to the Phrygian cap. It was worn by people who were wise. It was considered a mark of enlightenment. It meant you were evolving. You were wiser than most people. You were educated. You had light, knowledge in your head. And so you were given a hat. So there are many different ways this hat has been used throughout time, but it was first used as a sign of enlightenment and knowledge by Mithra. And how do we know, how do we know that Constantine was part of this cult? And how do we know, aside from Googling it, because I have another image here for you. You remember that monument that Constantine built to commemorate his victory that he supposedly won in the name of Christ? Well, look who's wearing a Phrygian cap on his monument. That is his monument. Also, if I didn't mention already, there's going to be a link down below that talks about a lot of this, and that it's video footage of the place itself, of the monument, amongst other things, talking about all these similarities. I believe they cover the wise men as well, and their Phrygian caps, and all of that. So, yes, there's a very big connection between Constantine and Christmas. Now you might be wondering, well, how the heck would Constantine decide to put the Phrygian caps on these wise men? Does that just mean they're foreigners? Well, they're all red. They're all red in the picture, if you didn't notice. That means something. Either they're freedmen, or, I'm not quite sure what that meant in the exact timing, but the overlapping consistencies between these pagans wearing these hats in ceremonial meaning, part of how Rome, and with the monument, because Romans didn't just throw up monuments to themselves. They also included pagan symbols of their gods in honor, in thanks for giving them victory. So now some people do argue that the people on the monument of this victory that Constantine did, some people claim that those individuals are prisoners that are wearing those hats, because prisoners were given a specific kind of hat back in the day. And there were two kinds of hats that people tend to get mixed up between the slaves and the slaves who were freed. Fun fact, the cartoon movie series The Swan Princess actually depicts both of these hats in their appropriate uses. There's the henchman Knuckles, who wears a gray version of this hat, and then there is his boss, the appropriately named Clavicus, who wears the red version. And if you have not seen these series, you should at least watch the first two. Even my super conservative parents were cool enough to let me watch these. That's how pure these movies are. So yeah, if you have kids or you like smoking weed, you should definitely check them out. But were the men on Constantine's monument weak-minded prisoners or wise men? The thing is, look at this guy. Look at this statue. His hands aren't bound. There's nothing about him that screams slave or prisoner at all. It's like he's just kind of looking down and watching over everyone. And the link I provide, they take the same stance, that these are clearly Mithric members. This is an ode to the cult of Mithras. And I tend to agree, because I don't see any ropes or bonds of any kind on the statue to hint that it is a prisoner of war. And plus, why would you put the prisoner of war on top or near the top? And he has 8 of them, or 6, I can't remember exactly, but he has multiple all around. Not all of them wear hats, but some of them do. The majority of them do, in fact. So, yeah, and in fact, it made me wonder, the more I thought about it, I wondered, you know what? I wonder if that is why the Roman helmets were shaped the way they were. Maybe they weren't. Maybe that's not why they were shaped that way. But I noticed, and because the Romans weren't the only ones that had that shape going, with the hat going up like that, with the plume and feathers and everything. But you can't deny the resemblance. And given that it was a Roman officer cult, and only officers were going to get a helmet that had a going up the front, well, it makes sense why Rome would have that style adopted, but they may have had that style adopted already, and the cult of Mithra came a little bit later because, like I said, it came right before Christianity. So Rome had already been doing its thing before the cult of Mithras was formed, but it was formed during the growth of the empire, so it was around officially before Christianity.
And then as I was editing this video, I realized I should probably just Google Phrygian helmets, and lo and behold, they exist. So yeah, Rome probably did not get their inspiration from the Phrygians, just their religion.
And, not only, is it, the similar shape and everything else, not only is it red, but it also made me realize we still wear a form of the Phrygian cap every year during Christmas. You know which one it is? That's right, the fucking Santa hat. Oh yeah, I know, he wears it backwards, but I mean, come on. It's red and December 25th. Hello. Whose birthday is it on December 25th? Originally? Horus, Apollo, Mithras, not Jesus. In fact, when was Jesus' birthday? Like February or August? I don't remember. I dare you to look it up. Add that to the list of things that you need to check out to know the facts on, because it was proven long ago, like years ago, literally. It's not new information that Jesus was not born in the latter half of the year. Not at all. Constantine made that up. Why? Because he needed to keep the Christians in check, obviously. And, something he did that a lot of other Roman emperors didn't do? Constantine took statues that were designated to other gods, like specifically the god Apollo. He had Apollo's face removed and had his own face put on the statue. He also did this with some previous emperors, kind of making himself look like he was the one that had those emperors' victories. Yeah, he literally screwed with previous emperors' monuments to make himself look like he was the badass that did it. And then, like that weren't enough, I mean, it wasn't Constantine that did it, but some other Roman official had his son painted, and then that painting was used to portray the very first image we ever had of Jesus. And yeah, that is why people think that Jesus was white. Because they used an Italian model. Well, Roman model. Roman back in the day, Italian now. But he, whoever he was, whatever he was mixed with, maybe he was mixed with someone who was a little bit more white-skinned too, which would explain why he had a little bit of a tan, but also like that long brown hair and everything. That's where Jesus came from, or the picture, anyways. But the similarities between Mithraism and Christianity do not end there. In fact, I discovered a paper that's like 6 pages long with 7 more explored points of things that are very similar between Christianity and Mithraism. And just as a little, because I've never done anything on Christmas before, when I came across this, I thought, you know what? This is a video all of its own. And so by the time you see this video, I will have created another video of just reading this paper. And it lists its own sources and everything. And this was recently done. Recent as of 2023, in fact. Wow, about almost 2 years ago now. And so I will be reading that for you on Christmas Day. Well, it'll be posted on Christmas Day, so make sure you come back tomorrow to hear about that. Because it's fun. It's really fun. But let's get back to the Puritans. I doubt the Puritans knew about the Last Supper. And they would have had a really hard time swallowing that one because that's the thing. The name Puritan comes from the desire of these particular Christians to purely follow what is in the Bible. Now, the origin of the Bible is a whole nother matter, but that also came about through Catholicism. I don't know if it was Constantine himself, since he died the year that he legalized Christianity. Wonder if that was God striking him dead for that. Who knows? But the people that came after him collected the teachings of Jesus and destroyed a lot of them, and then edited a lot of their own. And that is how we ended up with the four Gospels that we have. That is why they are as similar as they are, and that is why they are written in a certain fashion, very differently, very professionally, given who was supposedly the actual writers. None of the disciples were really that learned. They couldn't write that stuff down. There were those stories, who knows when those stories were exactly written down, but they were not written down at the time of when they happened. And when you start comparing some of the things in the Gospels to what the Romans believe and how the Romans behave, you can see some bits and pieces of Roman propaganda scattered throughout there. But you have to know what to look for. Otherwise, well, of course Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by him. But what if that's what the Romans put in? But of course, the Puritans were not quite that well educated. They didn't have all the sources that we have today. They didn't have the internet, sadly. So they could only focus on what they had in front of them, which was the Catholic-provided Bible. King James provided Bible. Whatever they were using at the time. It was probably King James at the time. But at least they were honest enough to admit, when they found out, that Christmas was in fact pagan. So why exactly did they dislike Christmas so much? Well, now we come to it. They banned Christmas because Puritans do not believe in having fun. Literally. These are the most gothic Christians that you could ever come across. And I'm not even stressing that. They didn't wear makeup, but, well, yeah, because they were against that too. But they did not even wear flashy clothes. A lot of the times, they were the ones in the black outfits and like the white collars and the tall hats and everything. The people that you see depicted in the Thanksgiving, some of them, yeah, some of those were Puritans. Some of those were Puritans. The ones that were dressed in all black, those were the ones that were, like, the more black they were probably Puritans. They did not celebrate. Those were the ones not celebrating Christmas because they didn't believe in self-expression. They didn't believe in drinking. They didn't believe in swearing. They didn't believe in dressing fancy or really doing anything, like just smiling, laughing, having a good time. I mean, maybe they had their own jokes, who knows? Maybe they had things that they laughed at, but good Lord, were they depressing. And according to my parents, they are who we are descended from on my father's side, which may explain why I like the color black so much. Who knows? But, oh, in addition to that, what do we do on the holidays? We drink. So the Puritans, very much so against that. No drinking, no laughing, no dancing, no having a good time, because all that's sinful. Having too much of a good time is sinful. And on top of that, there is nothing, even in the Bible that the Romans gave us, there's nothing in the Bible that says that Jesus wanted his birthday celebrated. Nothing. The closest thing we have are the wise men and the shepherds and the angels and all that. And honestly, that could have all very been easily thrown in as Roman propaganda as well to boost up Jesus and make him seem like more than he actually was, so that Constantine, you know, the guy that likes to put his face on God's faces in his own culture, so that you guys could understand that he was the second coming of Christ. He was the return. He was heaven sent to earth. He brought the heavenly kingdom to the world. That's what he wanted. That's how narcissistic he was. He wanted people to worship him. But that was the number one reason, because Christmas is not in the Bible. It is not commanded to be celebrated. And so, Puritans decided to unite together and ban Christmas. Damn those pagans, we'll show them. So they banned Christmas in 1640, first in Scotland. And then in England in 1647. And then in the American colonies. Yep, like I said, they came to America. They were in the Thanksgiving paintings. They were banning Christmas. The official year was 1659. And America would not even exist for another 117 years. And then it would be almost another 100 years on top of that before Christmas would actually be fully legalized. It was first in Massachusetts Bay, and that was actually the only place it maintained being banned. After America got formed, that was about, well, yes, that was 117 years later when America was finally born. It was a total of 197 years before Massachusetts had to legalize Christianity. And you know why they had to legalize it? Because a president made it a federal holiday. The president, none other than Ulysses S. Grant. That's right. Christmas was not made a federal holiday and unbanned in America until after the Civil War had happened. And if you know anything about Ulysses S. Grant's personal habits, it might make sense. They say he liked to drink. And you know, to be honest, who doesn't love eggnog or peppermint schnapps with hot chocolate? I mean, come on. But, you know, Puritans, hell no. So did the Puritans celebrate anything in replacement of Christmas? In short, no. I looked it up. I looked it up to see. Yes, they celebrated Thanksgiving. That was one of them. But that was really about it when it came to religious holidays. They celebrated graduation day, which I'm assuming had something to do with school. I don't really know. Election day. And Thanksgiving Day, yes, we mentioned that one. And then another day, which I had actually never heard of before. So I had to really dig into that one. This one was called Training Day. And it weirded me out when I first read the description, but just listen. So it wasn't a holiday, but it was a day every month where the Puritans would get together and they would practice military exercises, marching, using their guns, and all that. And before any of you go yelling, Christian nationalism, that's not what it was, okay? These were very different times. Remember, America wasn't formed yet. There was a lot of aggression between natives and the settlers, and people had to be prepared in case Indians came and attacked, and probably other people as well, depending on the year. You know, there were Indians and French and a whole mess of people that were all over the place, causing all kinds of havoc, and there were multiple wars that were going on. So, yeah, you had to be somewhat prepared for the worst, because a village could straight up come under attack from the natives, or from bandits, or from enemy forces that were waging war. So not really a bad thing. It's, if anything, it's practical. It was necessary that they did those things, and it was once a month. Not a holiday, just practical training. But in addition to all the sadness and the military training and all the crap that they believed, the Puritans also, like, this is how nutty they were. They weren't just about basically being the Gothic version of Christians, literally. They wouldn't even let you go much of anywhere. You could get your food, you could go to church, which the Puritan services could last up to 6 hours. Get your shopping and food, church for 6 hours, and whatever your profession is, your job. Those are the only 3 things that you are allowed to leave your house for. Literally, leave your house for. Your property. You don't go anywhere. You don't do anything else with your life. Your life is church for 6 hours at a time. Multiple meetings throughout the week, too. Your life is church, work, and staying alive. That is it. There's nothing happy about being a Puritan. So, yeah, needless to say, Puritans put the cult into culture. And they worked hard to keep Christmas from being legal. But we can all be grateful that Christianity lost the war on Christmas, because otherwise we might not have Christmas. So if you love Christmas, thank a pagan. And if you are an American and you love Christmas, thank a pagan and a drinker. And if you would like to know more about the details between Mithras, the Mithric cult, and Christianity, well, come back tomorrow. And I must, at this moment, admit that I also messed up in my previous video. I thought that Krampus night was the night before Christmas, on Christmas Eve, but I was wrong. That was actually on the 5th of December, so I am mega ultra lightning late for that. But I still like to celebrate Krampus throughout the whole year anyways. So, I hope you have all enjoyed this video. I hope you will join me in the next video tomorrow on Christmas Day as we dive into the Mithric cult. and its similarities with Christianity. Until then, my friends, stay safe, stay off the naughty list, and farewell.